Mr. Chairman, we are live on YouTube.
Thank you, Clarissa. We'll call the meeting to order. This is the Ag, State Lands, and Water Resources. Yeah, that's all of them. I'm getting new to this committee. I've served on Ag before, but not as a chairman. I just left chairman of transportation. And it's really an honor to be back. This will be I'm trying to think of the date, the 2nd of February. Clarissa, go ahead and call roll.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Representative Blackburn.
Here.
Representative Clausen.
Here.
Representative Fortner.
Here.
Representative Heiner.
Here.
Representative Larson.
Here.
Representative Western.
Here.
Representative Worf.
Here.
Representative Winter.
Here.
Chairman Eklund.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go through a few things. We have some rules, and usually, and they expedite the whole meeting process. We always go through the chairman, just like we've been doing on the House. You go through the speaker, chairman, and whoever's chairing, and it just speeds up everything. I'm trying to think of what else I need to say. There's a possibility that since we're only missing two of the, I see your hand, Representative Worf. I'll get to it in a minute. If it becomes too disruptive as people start coming into the chamber, that's where I think most of us are at. We might find a room, one of the meeting rooms, and try doing it that way. It won't be a true hybrid session. I've been in some of those, and you've got a picture of legislators or agencies sitting together, and it's so minute you can't see them raise their hands or do anything. So I don't know as I like the hybrid very well, but if we would at least be in one room that's fairly quiet. The House becomes a rather noisy place about 10 o'clock as we're about to gavel in. So Representative Worf, did you have a question?
Mr. Chairman, I can hardly hear you. I don't know if everybody else is having a similar problem, but I just wondered if somehow you could turn up your volume, because I can hardly hear you.
I'm sorry.
You're okay.
Can everybody else?
It's clear for me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I can hear you pretty well, Mr. Chairman.
I can hear well too.
Okay. It might be in yours. I'm thinking there's a place you go to settings on audio, and maybe yours is turned down.
Yeah, I'm at max, Mr. Chair, but that's all right. I'll just have to listen real close.
Okay. All right. We might, Clarissa, if you could have one of our LSO staff call Representative Worf and see if he can walk through anything else on his computer. I'd like for everybody to be able to hear this really well. Our first, so normally I will be chairing, but I don't need to chair all of the time. If any of you are interested in chairing, let me know, and whenever it works, I'll let other people chair. A goal of our leadership and legislature is to bring on new members, train them, and have them ready to chair committees in a few years. I've been here for 10 years. I don't know as I'm going to stick around too much longer. So anyway, we need new leadership anyway. So our first bill for consideration is the omnibus water bill planning. It's Senate file 0037. And so this was not a joint ag bill, it's a select water bill. And I'm going to turn over the chairing of this, if you're okay with that, to Representative Larson. He's the chairman of Select Water. If you want to take over and bring people into the meeting, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if I have control to bring others into the meeting, but I think Director Gephardt is ready. And it would be great if he could lead us through. I think everyone got an email that was sent out of the blue book, he calls it. And I think that would be best to follow that. There's kind of a cheat sheet in there that makes it a lot easier to follow. Is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, it is. If you're handy with your computer, you can do it. Normally, we'd be in a room together with our own little books that the Water Development Office has for us. Go ahead, Chairman.
Thank you. Are you there, Director Gephardt?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, good morning. Good morning, members of the committee. I'll be talking with you a little bit today about the omnibus water bill planning, Senate File 37. The first thing I'd like to do, because I think it will help to whoever's carrying the bill, to provide some information to explain the planning ebook that was just mentioned. The makeup of this PDF, it resembles a hardbound 3-ring notebook, essentially. The first page is a spreadsheet that summarizes all of the projects in the bill. The next section is the bill itself, and in this case, we are working off the engrossed bill. It's been through the Senate already. Under tab A, so on the left of your PDF, there's a little ribbon button, and if you hit that ribbon, it'll bring up basically a table of contents of the entire book. But under tab A is a description of the water development program. Excuse me, that provides some pretty good information about the program, our funding streams, and really kind of a high level of what our program does. Then under tab B is the financial projections. That is the projections of our water development accounts 1, 2, and 3 that we use to determine the amount of funding we have for projects as they come in each year. And then starting under tab C it's the director's recommendation for each of the projects that we'll be talking about in the bill. Provide some background information on what those projects are. And those are really useful. And if I have questions, that's typically what I go to try to answer questions. So there's a lot of good information there. But for this discussion, we'll focus mainly on the spreadsheet, and then I will go through the bill. There's some on our amendments. The way those amendments are written can be kind of confusing. They're simply just time extension amendments, but the way they're written is a little more difficult than that, because it's amending prior legislation. So if we go to the bill, actually I can go to the spreadsheet on page 2, following the cover page. This spreadsheet is a list of all the projects that we have. And I'll mention at this point that all of the projects in this planning bill, this whole process started in May, where we identify project applications come into us, and then we start the vetting process between the Water Development Office, the Water Development Commission, and Select Water. So for each of these projects, we have gone through a series of evaluation of the project to make sure the project is a valuable and viable project. And then we've also gone through consultant selection. So we have consultants waiting for this bill to pass, and then for agreements. They're already selected for these. So as soon as this bill becomes law, we'll sign those agreements and then we'll get those consultants under contract and going on these projects. So the first block on this spreadsheet, this refers to section 1, page 2 of the bill. And there are 7 projects. 4 of them are master plans. 1 is a watershed study. And the final one in this block is the continuing UW water research program. And Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, I'll just kind of breeze through these and pause if there are any specific questions on any of the projects. Would that work?
I think that'd be great, Mr. Director.
Okay, thank you. So this first block of projects on page 2 of the bill, the total requested appropriation is for $1,359,454. And I'll pause now to see if there are any questions on this block of projects.
Are there any questions? I don't see any.
Okay.
Please continue.
Mr. Chairman, the next block of projects is the level 2 projects from our new development account. That's water development account 1. There are 4 projects in this block. They're all feasibility studies. One of them is actually a phase 2, but they're the Bighorn Regional Transmission, the Byron Rural Water Supply, Gillette Water System Improvements, and the Little Snake River Valley Water Supply phase 2. The total appropriation request from Water Development Account 1 for this block is $586,000. And I'll pause for any questions on that.
Are there any questions, committee members? Don't see any.
Okay,
Please continue.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next block are level 1 projects from our Water Development Account 2, our rehab account. And in the engrossed bill, there is only 1 project. Originally, we had the Lander Ditches Rehabilitation Project. That was amended out in the Senate. There was some concern about ownership, water rights. So I think we've got a little work to do. They can either, I think, in talking to Lander, they may choose to perform this study by themselves. There is the option that they can come back next year for application again if we get these ownership issues resolved. But the remaining project in this block is the Highland Irrigation District Master Plan. Total appropriation out of account 2 for $192. And I'll pause.
Are there any questions, committee members? I know during the weekend there was quite a discussion going on in Lander. And then they came back to us and the city had mentioned that they think they can handle it and maybe you'll continue that on their own. Please continue, Mr. Gephardt.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. The next block are project amendments. I'll explain the projects first, and then I'll kind of show you very quickly what the bill does, just for whoever's carrying it, that just to simplify the wording in this bill. But the biggest project in our amendments is the Lapral Irrigation District Rehabilitation Phase 2. For those of you that don't know, this is a continuation of the Lapral Dam. Previous studies have identified that the dam is essentially at the end of its useful life. It's under SEO orders for storage restrictions. Essentially, there's concern that the dam could fail. This dam is located upstream of Ayers Bridge and I-25 near the town of Douglas. And I believe that the EAP, the Emergency Action Plan, shows significant damage to the Ayers Bridge location, I-25, and as well as the town of Douglas itself. So we're continuing the evaluation of this dam, and we're requesting $4.3 million for this. And what that 4.3 gives us is it continues this project into the design phase. We've already evaluated some alternatives. We believe we've landed on the preferred alternative. So now we're doing more evaluation on that design, as well as diving into some of the permitting. But I'll also mention that we're using this $4.3 million as leverage to go find some federal funding partners for this project. This will be a significant project if it goes to construction, and we're going to need some outside funding. So we've found a way to leverage this $4.3 million to try to find some federal funding, and we've actually made an application for some FEMA money for this project. So if we're successful on that FEMA money, then we can stretch this $4.3 million further for future phases of this project. The remaining projects under this block of the spreadsheet are simply for 3 years extensions to existing projects. We've got the Fontenelle Dam and Outlet Works infrastructure project, the Glendale Reservoir full utilization project, Clear Creek Storage, and the Norwood River Storage, Alkali Creek. So those are just time extensions. And if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll direct you to an example of the wording in the bill, just to kind of help you. On page 5 of the bill, section 4. As I meant, oh, this is Lapral. Let me go down to section.
Mr. Chairman, this is Representative Eklund. We have a couple of questions. We
I'm
might
sorry.
try to grab those as they go. Watch for little hands. Thank you.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. I was looking at the blue book. Representative Heiner, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I look at these extensions, 3-year time extensions, is there a reason that these projects are lagging behind what the original concept was? And do we have a sunset for this funding to help them finish these projects up on time, such that if they don't do it by a certain amount of time, then the funding goes away? Thank you.
Mr. Director.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Heiner, these 3 projects all deal with dams of some sort or another, and I'll kind of explain what's going on with these. So the Fontenelle Dam and Outlet Works infrastructure project, we're studying the ability of a Bureau facility to generate more storage that's simply by adding riprap or protecting the bottom portion of this reservoir. So the reservoir is already constructed. It's got this amount of water at the bottom of the reservoir that we're trying to come up with a way to easily make that accessible rather than dead pool. So this is just working with the Bureau of Reclamation. It's their facility, and looking at what we would need to do to be able to utilize that. Fontenelle could be critical in times of drought and potentially could be used for curtailment in the Colorado River. But really, what we're doing with this is we're continuing with the design and doing some NEPA task orders. So this is just an extension of what's continuing on. I will mention that these dam projects, and not meaning to curse, but they're dam and reservoir projects. But they do take some time. It's not unusual for us to come back and request extensions for this, but this project is really to free up about 81,000 acre feet of water. The Glendale Reservoir full utilization, similar concept. It's looking at existing storage and working with the Army Corps of Engineers to retime the way they manage their floodwater into the Glendale Reservoir. We're hoping that we can work with them and change the timing of their releases of that floodwater to put it more to beneficial use rather than to just let it go when flood conditions improve. And some federal legislation has come along that we think can help us with that. So this is just holding this project open to allow us more time to work with the Army Corps of Engineers. And then the final 2 projects, the Clear Creek Storage Project and the Alkali Creek, the Norwood River Storage, Alkali Creek. Very similar things. We're in the permitting phases of the Clear Creek Storage. So we've got consultants on board, and this is just for if things come up that are needed, then we maintain this appropriation. We are not asking for new appropriation, just time. And then the Alkali Creek is actually under the final design phase of that. We've got this pool of money is to help us with any permitting issues that come up during final design. So it's just maintaining that appropriation to use it as things come up. Does that help answer your question?
Follow up, Representative Heiner? No, you're good. Okay. Representative Worf.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, being new to the committee, I guess this is kind of a general question for the director. I was just wondering, I'm assuming that as we go through this, they have an allocation on each different level 1, level 2, and so forth. I was wondering the money that we're spending, I don't have any idea how much they have in their budget. And I guess, Mr. Chairman, that's one of the things I would like to know is, when we're spending this money, are we 80% of their budget, 90% of their budget, are we 50% of their budget? Having no idea. I mean, it's good to see how much we're spending, but I don't know what that correlates to as far as how much money we actually have in those accounts. So I just wondered if the director could maybe answer that question for me. Thank you.
Yes, Representative Worf, I think in this document that he sent us in the email, it does show you that, but we'll have Director Gephardt go through the financials. How about if we finish this part, if that would be okay, and then go into the financials?
Yeah, that would be great, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Director Gephardt?
Okay.
Any other questions? I'm sorry, committee members? Director Gephardt, please continue.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was just going to explain in the bill the way that the amendments were written. So on page 7, line 18, talks about section 2, level 2 feasibility. Really what this is doing is this is language from prior legislation. I believe this was 2018 session law that this was written. So all of the language, all of the verbiage in this section of the bill simply adds 3 years to the Fontenelle Dam and the Glendale Reservoir projects. And if you go down to the bottom of that section on page 9, lines 9 through 23, that shows all of the projects that were originally appropriated under that section. And on line 23 is really the heart of it. Total for the 2021 appropriations for this section, $0. So all of the language above it was just extending the time for those 2 projects. Then they had to add some language in to keep the existing projects with the same reversion date. So we're not changing those, just the 2 projects, the Fontenelle and the Glendale projects. So each of these extensions are worded very similarly.
Are there any questions, committee members? Representative Heiner?
Just continuing that thought, thank you, Chairman. Continuing that thought, the original appropriation, and I know I'm a number of years late here, but whereas some of these facilities are owned by the BOR and different entities other than the state, are they contributing towards these studies, or is it totally funded by the state?
Director Gephardt?
Mr. Chairman, so the Fontenelle Dam, for example, the way those projects work is any improvements are typically the responsibility of the state or whoever is asking to use that storage space. But really what that gives us is if we fund it, then we secure that storage space in the reservoir. We've got other contracts in Fontenelle, Glendale, Pathfinder, where we're responsible for the O&M, but then we obtain that storage. So we're using their facility to store our water, and they do require a fee for that.
Any other questions? Don't see any. Thank you, Mr. Gephardt.
Mr. Chairman, the last section of this bill, section 6, this ties back to the Lapral Irrigation District. And what we're requesting for section 6 is to transfer water from Water Development Account 1 to Water Development Account 2. This is money that's already in our accounts. We're just transferring between one account to the other. And this is to fund the $4.3 million for the Lapral project. And then this is a good segue when we're ready to talk about the financials and the funding of these accounts too. But simply this is requesting a transfer from one account to the other.
Committee members, are there any questions on that item, section 6? Don't see any. Please continue.
Mr. Chairman, I'll try to answer the financial question. And I'll start on page 15 of the PDF under tab A, program description. The second page of this description is actually on page 16. At the top of this description talks about how these water development accounts are funded. These are not general fund accounts. They are all funded from a distribution from the mineral severance tax distribution. And the way this works is the first $155 million that goes into the mineral severance tax distribution account of the state, we get a certain portion for each of our accounts for that. So we have 3 accounts, and essentially we have 4 now after last year's emergency water account, but we use the first 3 accounts for our projects. And Water Development Account 1 is our new development program. That's where we're creating new water resources, developing new water for new uses. And that is funded by getting 12.45% of that $155 million that goes into the mineral severance tax. So that equates to about $19.3 million every year. Water Development Account 2 gets 2.1% of that $155 million. And that equates to about $3.25 million a year. And then Water Development Account 3, that's our dams and reservoir account. That gets a small portion of the severance tax of 0.5%, which equates to about $775,000 per year. When that account was developed, I believe in the 90s, there was a lot of seed money put into that to set up, at the time, Governor Meade's 10 and 10. So that account had seed money in it. It does get a little bit annually, but a majority of that account was the seed money put into that originally. And then on the next page, this is getting into the financials. So this is a projection of how we look at how much money we have left prior to these projects that we're discussing this year. So at the top, this is, we'll go through Water Development Account 1. I'll kind of explain how this works. We have a cash balance at that time of about $112 million. And then as we go through this, you will see that some of that, a majority of that money is already appropriated. And by that, I mean, projects are already developed. The funding is already set up for those projects. So then we figure out how much do we think we have to go forward with new projects. So the first section, the FY20 revenues, we estimate the revenues that we would receive in fiscal year 20. For in this instance, because time has elapsed since this was prepared, we've got a majority of that money already. Then we factor in our expenditures. These are some of the operations of the agency, and then we have some other non-project appropriations that come out of our funds. We fund the Board of Control for the SEO's office and some other things that come out of this. And then our outstanding commitments, this is what I was talking about. So all of our projects or previous projects are funded out of this, and that takes a significant amount of the cash balance that we started with. So then we get down into fiscal year 2021. These are our anticipated revenues. This is based on the percentages of the mineral severance tax that we'll get. We've got some interest earnings on some loans. And then we have a smaller amount of other fundings. Those would be like our reservoir, O&M accounts, water sales, some of the money we generate off of that. So we look at the 2 years of the biennium of what we think or what we estimate those revenues would be. And then we get down to the bottom, the subtotal of anticipated revenues, and then right below that, the balance available for appropriations. So that's the number that we go into this year looking at when we start evaluating our projects. And we're estimating that we'll have about 27.5 million to fund new projects for the 2021 water bills, both the planning and the construction. And I do not have this in the notebook, but I will explain where we think the balances will be after these bills, all these projects are approved, and the transfers that we requested, both this 4.3 and you'll remember when we discussed the construction bill, we asked for a transfer of 7.5 from account 1 to account 2 as well. But following this, we estimate that we'll have about 9.1 million in account 1 going into next year's biennium. We'll have just a little bit over $1 million in account 2 to go into next year's biennium budget. And then in our dam and reservoir account, we'll have about 25 million remaining in that. And remember that the annual revenue in the water development account 3 is fairly small. So really, we look at that 25 million for all of our dams and reservoirs projects. That's not going to get us far into the future. So we reserve that for dams and reservoir only. Representative Wharf, does that help explain the finances to you? Or can I do a better job?
Representative Wharf, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director. I really appreciate that. You did a great job, and I did find it. I was able to follow along on the document that you sent me. So great explanation of that document for me. I guess one of the reasons I asked the question, Mr. Chairman, was I see that we're estimating that income, and I just wonder, I wanted to know, number one, that we were paying attention. Obviously, I don't think anybody in the state wants to lose our funding for our water. And so I guess that's the one thing I wonder is how well, I mean, the director's been doing this, their agency's been doing this for a long time with, the declining income from mineral revenue. I was just wondering how close his projections have been, and just wanting to make sure we're tracking that. But I'm very impressed with this agency. They've always done a good job. But I just wondered if he could maybe touch on that a little bit, because we've all talked about how the declines are coming. So, Director
Gephardt, could you answer that? Thank you.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chairman, Representative Wharf. Yes, that is something. This might be new to the agency. The real concern for future funding. It's definitely on our radar. We are watching that. We're looking at some of the projections as well as running future analysis. So we are monitoring that very closely, and at this point we're nervous, but we're comfortable. We've been looking at the CRAG, the most recent CRAG. It looks like the first 155 million, even under some of the worst scenarios, will still be in that mineral severance tax. So we're optimistic from that perspective as well.
Thank you. Representative Fortner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is basically a follow-up question to Mr. Wharf's question, or speaker's question. Have you guys looked at any other mechanisms to funding this besides severance taxes? Are you looking at maybe doing something along with DOT or something like that to pick up some extra taxes, or where are you at on that program? Thank you, sir.
Director Gephardt?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Fortner, we haven't really looked at additional funding sources. I believe the funding revenues right now were established years ago. So we've been living with that. One thing that I think we are much more active on right now here in the recent past is looking at federal funding to help with our projects. We're taking more of an active role in how we can leverage our state funds with federal money. There's a new legislation with the WRDA bill out of the U.S. Congress that we think will really benefit. Senator Barrasso did a great job in including us. So we think that there's some potential funding for a lot of these reservoir projects, for example. So we are taking a very hard look at how we can leverage some of that federal funding to stretch our dollars further. But as far as looking at ways to generate revenue, I can't say that we've been real active in that other than just stretching the dollars that we do have further.
Director Gephardt, can you explain on the planning side, is it usually, and I should know this, usually water development do they pay 100% usually, or I can't remember.
Mr. Chairman, yes, we do have an application fee, but we do the planning studies we do fund. There are many reasons for that, but really the main reason that we fund the planning studies is we're looking at investments of state dollars. And so we want an unbiased study and vetting of projects, alternatives analysis. So we find value in controlling, or not necessarily controlling, but managing the planning studies to our criteria so that we can make good decisions on investing state dollars. And I do think that that's important, that we continue to do that. But I see that the studies differ in I guess preference between what a sponsor would choose and the way we look at these projects. We don't have a predetermined outcome when we go into these. We try to figure out prioritize the projects for the sponsors and then invest state dollars in those priorities.
Thank you, Director. Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to the Director for his explanation of the finances. I think that's pretty clear for me. But one thing that I'm a little bit confused on is we recently ran an omnibus water bill through the House, and now we're running this one through the Senate. And I guess I assumed that they were the same, but they're not. Are they being funded from the same sources? And why are they different and not just combined into a mirror bill between the two houses?
Director Gephardt, I'll let you answer that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I will try. I don't know the history of why there are two bills, why there's a construction bill and a planning bill, but they are two different bills. It's always been done this way. And I don't know the reason for it, but we just continue with that same mindset. But the funding for all of these projects, they are the same accounts. Planning studies are same water development accounts 1, 2, and 3, as are the construction. So if you would go back to page 2 of the PDF, that's the spreadsheet. We do combine the total appropriations out of both bills at the very bottom of that. That's kind of a summary. So if you were to look at that, we combine the planning bill appropriations and the construction bill appropriations. So in total, out of all of our accounts for all the projects we're requesting this year, we're looking at about a $24 million appropriation for these projects.
And maybe, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
And I'm sorry I don't have a good explanation as to why there are two bills, but it's always been done that way, I believe.
I'm going to ask Chairman Eklund if he could recall that. He's the longest standing member for us on the Select Water.
Mr. Chairman, I, I think I can answer it in a little bit. The part that's most confusing in this is there's money appropriated in both bills. The actual funding portion of, if it's a appropriation bill of any kind, it usually starts in the House. This, I believe, is tied enough to our other bill. I'm not sure. Traditionally, this is the way they've done it. It spreads out the workload between the House and the Senate. This, in my mind, might be, other than our appropriations bill, might be as big and maybe an important a bill as we ever come across. So it's good to split out the risk, I guess you'd call it. They both do different things. One is more in the planning stage and the early parts of things. But I see that that's not altogether correct either. The other one is more into the construction and probably more the heavy spending. That'd be the best answer I'd have. I may research that and get back to the committee on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Heiner.
So as a follow-up, thank you, Chairman. As a follow-up to that, with the two accounts, the development and the study, will we still at the end of the biennium have 9 million in leftover in account number 1 and 1 million in account number 2, or are the numbers different when you combine the two accounts?
Director Gephardt.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Heiner, the 9 million remaining and the 1 million remaining, that includes both projects together, or both bills together. So all of the funding requests this year result in that number.
Any other questions, committee members? Oh, Chairman Eklund.
One thing that I might add, so those are the numbers we're left with, and there's always a little concern that this account would be raided because there is money there. And I guess you've heard my passion on water in Wyoming, and it's essential. We have to have it. We're a dry state, and the development of projects is central to this. The storage of water and how we can get the water. You've heard the arguments on cloud seeding and why I favor the ability to increase water and keep our storage system filled. But there's also a need, I think, in education on how the money is spent. We kind of had a rating of the account in a different way a few years back by adding the state engineer's office with border control. And I don't know, it seemed like it was about $30 million or maybe, I think biennialized. Anyway, I believe that's what it was. And go ahead.
Representative or Director Gephardt, I think it's about 25, isn't it?
It's 14 biennium. 14 biennium for the border control. We do have some other non-project expenses out of that it probably does get close to that 25 that are non-project expenses out of our accounts.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track of, a million here, a million there, but it all adds up. Anyway, I just want the Ag Committee to be aware that there's always a little bit of envy that there is money left in accounts. I appreciate the way it's being managed, and you've kind of seen how it is. It's a well planned out system. Something I would add, Mr. Chairman, that I keep hearing around the state is that we aren't building dams anymore. So why is all this money in there? Well, we most certainly are building dams. We might be the only state in the country that's doing it. But we've got people that are constantly in the permitting process. It takes years to get that done. Alkali Creek is going to be a completely new project, but expansions and different things that we do to keep the state watered are constantly going on. And I believe they're essential, and I hope the Ag Committee understands that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Gephardt, how many dams are we in the process of? I know of Levitt and Alkali.
Mr. Chairman, we're in or very near construction of two. We've got Middle Piney and Levitt Reservoir. We've got Alkali Creek hot on its heels. That'll probably be designed and maybe go into construction next year. And then we've got probably 5 or 6 additional projects in various levels of permitting or planning that we're really focusing on. So we've got quite a few in the process. And I think Chairman Eklund's correct that not many states are able to do what we're currently doing. And it does take time, but we're active with our reservoirs.
Chairman Eklund?
I forgot to take my hand down, but I can continue to talk. I'll try not to use up too much valuable time. Getting back to the reservoir on Lapral, this dam is an unusual, just so the committee knows information, this dam is an unusual design. They were done over 100 years ago, or about 100 years ago. And they had a lot of labor and they did a lot with very little concrete. This dam is in jeopardy of breaking. If any dam in our system were to break, I'm not sure we'd get them rebuilt if they were real catastrophic because of pressure by different groups to get rid of reservoirs and whatnot. So keeping them sound and in good shape is important, and that's why we're kind of on the very beginning edge of Lapral, but it'll most certainly have to be rebuilt if they're going to continue to use it. The study will show us that, though. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any other questions, committee members? Director Gephardt, do you have anything to add?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'll just add on to Chairman Eklund's thought that yes, the Lapral is an example of a larger issue that I think the state is facing, and that's aging infrastructure. And that impacts both irrigation systems as well as potable drinking water systems. And it is a large issue, and there's a good picture of Lapral Dam. That's an Amberson style dam. I believe it's maybe the largest Amberson style dam still standing in the US. It's under restrictions right now I believe they can only maintain about 40% of their storage because of the concern with the dam safety. But it is an example of the larger issue the state's facing right now and aging infrastructure. And it's not just dams, it's all sectors, but in the water world, our program is one of the main uses in the state to help address aging infrastructure.
Okay, one more time, committee members, any other questions? What's the desire of the committee?
Move the bill.
Is there a second? All right, Representative Western seconds it. Chairman Eklund, do you want to take over?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and take over. So I guess we'll ask if there's any other public input before we've moved the bill and before we go into discussion. Did we have anyone else on board, Clarissa?
Mr. Chairman, I believe public comment has concluded unless the attendees would like to raise their hand. But I don't see anyone raising their hand, so I think we're good to go.
Okay, thank you. Committee, are you ready to vote, or is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question being called. Go ahead and call the roll, Clarissa.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for Senate File 37, Omnibus Water Bill Planning. Representative Blackburn.
Aye.
Representative Clausen.
Aye.
Representative Fortner,
Aye.
Representative Heiner,
Aye.
Representative Larson,
Aye.
Representative Western,
Aye.
Representative Worf,
Representative Wharf votes aye.
Representative Winter,
Aye.
Chairman Eklund,
Aye.
9 ayes.
Okay, thank you, committee. So I believe next in order will be House Bill 52. Am I correct, Clarissa?
Yes, you are correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and it's the Wyoming School Protein Enhancement Project. And do we have people here that are ready to testify on the bill?
Mr. Chairman, I did not receive a note from anyone, but I do see that Brett Moline has raised his hand, so I'd be happy to admit him to the meeting if you'd like.
Yes, go ahead and do that. Welcome, Brett. Go ahead when you're ready.
Mr. Chairman, he's joining the meeting now.
Okay. Hello, Brett.
Mr. Chairman, Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can, I think.
Yeah. Again, I'm Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation, lending our support to this bill. We started this program a few years ago, and in several areas, it's been extremely successful. And the way I look at this is it'll help get some of our local Wyoming product into the schools. I think the big thing is to help build that rapport between the ag industry and the schools, improve it from where it even is now. But also, I think it'll help lower the costs for the school meal programs by having that local meat donated and then having the processing paid for it. The net effect is it'll lower the cost of the cost of education and then improve the quality of meat that they're getting and help out the ag community, support their local schools that they're very proud of. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would sit for any questions.
Questions, committee? Okay, thank you, Mr. Moline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
All right. I think we'll just have some discussion within the committee to start with. Does everybody have a pretty good handle on what we're doing with this bill? I'll explain a few. Oh, go ahead. Representative Clausen, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to give kind of a brief overview of what we did because I was one of the few people in the interim. So this is a program that's gone on for quite a while, and it just kind of codifies. It was temporarily done in the budget bill, but it's fairly it's been fairly successful in our area. But it allows ranchers to donate a cull cow or cows, or well, you can see the long list of proteins to school districts, and this allows some school district funds to pay for the processing, and it's really been successful in our part of the world, and that's the gist of the bill. It just pays for processing for donated animals. Right.
One of the things I would add in our area, at county fairs, most county fairs have sales, and a good example of how this protein this meat gets into the school system would be those county fairs. The buyers oftentimes donate the animals back, and this will offset the processing cost. I don't know if you're aware, but it's probably $600, depending on where you go, probably $500 to $700 to process a beef cow, less with the lamb and pork, but still an expense that those buyers, when they're donating meat, that's another way of doing it, and the ranchers. And I think it gets into the diet of our children a really high quality protein. Mr. Worf, Representative Worf, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, sounds like a great program. I was just wondering, it sounds like it's also a fairly new program. Could you explain, or somebody explain, how many counties or school districts are actually participating in this program and what the plan is for expansion to get it to more counties or school districts in the state? Thank you.
Not sure. I've got an answer for part of it. My own Laramie County 2 does it. Oh, we've got some people ready to speak up. It's being done at the county fair level in Laramie County 2 by people who are supporting the project. One of the things I'd add is they really support these projects. The businesses do, and the kids are really well paid, and we can offset it a little bit with paying for the processing charge, at least when they're donating it. And maybe they're reluctant to donate if they have to throw on another $600. So we have questions from the committee. Representative Fortner, go ahead, or input.
Looks like a real nice common sense program. Whoever thought it up did an excellent job. My question is, with the savings that's accumulated through this program, is that passed on to the students that's buying lunches at the school, or is it going into different programs? Thank you.
I do not have an answer for that. Presently, most of the children under COVID restrictions are getting free meals, I believe. And that's part of the, whatever you call it, the money that we receive from the federal government is offsetting costs to families. So I know that's happening anyway. But this particular program, and it is new, but I can't remember since I've been here. So within the last few years is when it came about. We had another hand up, was it?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead, Clarissa.
we have Shelley Hamill who has raised her hand in the attendees list. I
Okay.
don't know if you'd like to admit her. She might be able to answer some of the committee's questions.
Yes, go ahead and submit her, Clarissa.
Mr. Chairman, she has been admitted to the meeting.
Okay, welcome to our meeting, Ms. Hamill.
Good morning.
Go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I'm Shelley Hamill, and I'm with the Wyoming Department of Education. I noticed that you had a couple questions about the number or who the districts were that were participating, and thought I might be able to provide some information for you. Just as in way of an overview, this is a bill that does match reimbursement, or it reimburses to a 50% match for school districts for the processing fee. So the first year that it was started and available to districts, that would have been the school year 2017-18. The WDE awarded for just about $4,200 on the front end to school districts who applied, who said, we believe we'll be getting processed meat, or we did get donated meat to be able to process. So we awarded them $4,200 so that they would know they had it on the back end after the processing was completed. In the end, we only had a reimbursement claim toward that $4,200 of $260. There were 4 districts that had been awarded their request, but only one of them submitted for reimbursement. In the school year 2018-19, the WDE again rolled the announcement and awarded funds just right under $25,000. That year, their claims that were submitted for reimbursement against that $25,000 was $11,425. So that still left about $13,500 that had been awarded but not requested for reimbursement. There were 10 districts that had been awarded funds, and 9 of the 10 actually submitted. In 2019-20, we awarded $16,400. There were only claims for reimbursement towards that of $3,400. So again, we saw almost $13,000 unclaimed. There were 6 districts that had submitted for reimbursement on the front end or planning to, and only 2 districts that submitted for reimbursement. If you are interested, I can share, what those districts, who they are, but I'm not sure that that's completely relevant. So if you have additional questions, I'm certainly happy to answer any that I might be able to.
Thank you, Mrs. Hamill. Committee questions? So you rattled off some figures pretty fast. I tried to write some of it down.
Sorry.
And when we get to the floor management of it, you might have one of the representatives contacting you. There was an unanswered question that Representative Worf had, and it was, how do we get the word out that the school districts can do this? And I think probably my guess is legislators and stock growers, the school district, of course, Wyoming Department of Ed can probably get that out. As far as to the producers, though, that might do the majority of this. I'm not sure whether it's producers or 4-H kids, but both work. Are there any other ideas? I don't have a good answer for that, Representative Worf. Looks like not. Well, thank you, Ms. Hamill. No one else, Clarissa, in the waiting room?
Mr. Chairman, Penny Vance just raised her hand, so I will admit her to the meeting now.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, she has been admitted to the meeting.
Okay, Mrs. Vance, can you hear us okay? Go ahead when you're ready, if you can hear. You're still muted, and I can't see your face. Several ways to unmute is you got to have your cursor near the bottom of the screen where the mute microphone is, or you press a space bar, see if that'll help you. And we could have, there you go. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
I am so sorry about that.
Oh, don't apologize. It's happening all the time. We had a conversation as we started the meeting that I need to have my 6-year-old grandson interning with me to keep these virtual sessions running along smoothly. Go ahead, Mrs. Vance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hear you. And members of the committee. My name is Penny Vance. I'm coming to you from the family ranch in northern Wyoming where I was raised and I still live. I'm the Ag and Local Foods Organizer for the Powder River Basin Resource Council. I'm here on behalf of our ag members in support of and to thank you for your support of House Bill 52, the School Protein Enhancement Bill. As we all know, if we could just figure out how to economically serve only Wyoming meats in our schools, our children would be healthier and our ag industry much stronger. Well, the school protein bill doesn't provide a formula to do that. It does reflect that vision, and we thank you for codifying this little project into law. Thank you.
Committee questions for Mrs. Vance? As you leave, I would just thank you for your help and support in getting word out. If you or any of your members come up with ideas as to how we do get the word out, let folks around the state know that this is a program available. Let us know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll definitely do that.
Okay, thank you. Clarissa, do we have anyone else ready to come in? Wanted to testify? Any more public testimony?
Mr. Chairman, I believe Representative Winter has a question.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong hands. Representative Winter, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a shout out to Penny Vance. I've known her a long time, and I just wanted to say hi and thank her for all her efforts in this behalf.
Thank you, Mr. Winter. Yes, long time.
Okay, no more public comment. Oh, we do have another Representative Worf. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I guess mine's more just a comment, but after hearing what Ms. Hamill and testimony of Ms. Vance, this appears to me to be one of Wyoming's best kept secrets. And so I guess it's not surprising to me. I think we all know the members in our community that raise these proteins that are being made available. And you can just see if every program in the government worked this well, we would be dollars ahead. And so I think it shows the importance of innovative programs in our state. And I really would encourage this body to look at and encourage things outside federal government. I think it's always better when the state's doing it. And I think this program shows it. When you look at the cost, what they estimated and what the claims actually were, that makes me proud of the people that live in this state and support it. So that's just my testimony. I think it's a great bill. And I don't think I need to urge anybody's support. I think it's already there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Worf. So the agriculture is the third largest industry in the state of Wyoming, and it is a well-kept secret. Most of us that are producing are just too busy to get out and advertise what we do. But and that's my own comments on it. But Representative Heiner, join in when you can.
Thank you, Chairman. I also want to voice my support of this concept and the program. It looks like it's been going on for a few years now, but my only reservation is we need to make this a permanent program rather than bringing legislation every biennium to support it. I think we should be able to make this a permanent program such that we can endorse it and get more support from the various school districts.
Thank you, Representative Heiner. I'm looking, and I believe we do fund it through the next 4 years, but maybe not after that. If somebody can straighten me up on that, I'm foggy. We only do 400 or 500 bills a year, so I don't know why I can't remember this, all of it. But anyway, Representative Larson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I have a question for Ms. Vance. Do you think it would be wise that we notify our junior livestock sales that this is something the buyers can give their products to the schools? And I put that in my calendar, and I think do you think that might be wise for the rest of us?
Mrs. Vance, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman and Representative Larson. I don't know how the flow of the money goes enough. Yes, I'm guessing that would be an excellent idea. And certainly anything that we can do as an organization to support that, we would do. It's a real positive bill. Thank you.
Mrs. Vance. Representative Winter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Hamill mentions a lot of figures, and they never seem to add up to the total that were appropriated. And I just wondered where the balance of that went, or where it's kept, or whatever. If you could answer that, I would appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman,
there you go.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead. We're not hearing you, but it says you're not muted. So go ahead when you can.
Again, Mr. and committee, I'm Shelley Hamill with the WDE. So I guess what I need to mention in regards to that question about the allocation, what happens to the remaining funds, is that there has not ever been an allocation to support this. Instead, the language in the previous iteration, and again in this one, direct the WDE to find funds from any allocation made to the WDE to support this. And I guess I would just share that there seems to be an interest in the committee, and we all recognize it's a good thing. At this point, it's increasingly difficult to be able to slice out pieces of funding to support it. So I think just be aware of that. Can I stand for any other questions?
Any other questions? Representative Blackburn, go ahead. You're still muted, Jim.
I'm good, Mr. Speaker. It was answered.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, Representative Heiner, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a follow-up for Ms. Hamel, what kind of appropriation would the WD request to be able to permanently fund this program?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Heiner, the bill speaks to $25,000 in matching funds, and so we would request that allocation.
Mr. Heiner, I can probably answer part of it. Oh, you've got a follow-up. Go ahead.
Yes, is that 25,000 per biennium or per year?
Go ahead.
Chairman, I'd have to look at the bill.
I've got it in front of me. It's per year. So we have that appropriated according to this through 2023 and 2024, $25,000 each time. In answer to some of that question, I'm guessing as we cut through our budget and look at more and more cuts that will be, they're just going to be there. This only provides half of this funding is to provide half of the processing bill on the animals. So there is a possibility, if we can get this program up and running, that if we did eventually have to cut it, it would be in place and would be happening without the appropriation, just with the legislation to donate animals or meat to the schools. So I think that's accurate, correct, Ms. Hamel?
Mr. Chairman and committee, so again, I would just restate that this has not ever been funded with a specific allocation to fund this. We've just been directed to find funding from any allocation in the agency. So certainly funding it while you work towards making it a permanent program would definitely demonstrate support for it and probably secure its ongoing participation of school districts.
Okay, any other questions or, yeah, go ahead, Representative Heiner.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. How would we go about funding this permanently? 25,000 a year and earmarking it specifically for this project. Would that need to go to another committee then, or how would we do?
Mrs. Hamel, I'm not sure if you have the answer for that or not.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and committee, Representative Heiner, I'm not sure that I have the specific details about how that all works, but potentially someone from LSO could walk us through that.
Yeah, if Representative Heiner, I think if it were to become a permanent program, we've got it funded. It looks like the program requested the Department of Education to find allocation through 2024. So we do have time to try to make this a permanent deal. As time goes on, though, it becomes harder and harder to find. We used to throw $100 million around 10 years ago like it was just spending cash, and now we look at 25,000 as and everything. We should be looking at it that way. But thank you, Representative Blackburn. You have more to add?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we'd be talking about a separate bill. I don't think we could incorporate that forever funding in this bill. And I don't know, do we need to move this bill?
We haven't yet. We're getting there.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure we'd need a separate bill. We could possibly amend it in. But LSO would help us with it. We don't need to do that just yet. So if there's no further testimony or questions, Jim, you have your hand still up, so there you go. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Moved by Blackburn, seconded by Representative Heiner. Any further discussion on the bill? Okay, it looks like we're ready to vote. Question, go ahead, Clarissa, with roll call.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote for House Bill 52, Wyoming School Protein Enhancement Project. Representative Blackburn.
Aye.
Representative Clausen.
Aye.
Representative Fortner.
Aye.
Representative Heiner.
Aye.
Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Western.
Aye.
Representative Worf.
Representative Worf votes aye.
Representative Winter.
Aye.
Chairman Eklund.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 54, Wyoming Meatpacking Initiative. It's also an interim bill. And do we have people here that can explain, answer some questions or explain the bill for us? I believe we do, correct, Clarissa?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure, but if folks in the attendee list could raise their hand, that would be great. Mr. Chairman, Penny Vance raised her hand, as well as Ron Goldberg. So I'd be happy to admit them.
Yep, go ahead and admit them, and there may be a couple others that I know of, maybe 3 others that I know of that could show up, and you can admit them anytime if they have their hand up.
Mr.
Go
Chairman.
ahead. Yeah.
I apologize. Jill Tregemba. I apologize.
Jill Tregemba.
Okay. I'll admit her as well.
Okay. Mr. Goldberg, you can explain this to us. It's under your purview with the Business Council. So go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members. Pleasure to meet with you this morning. It's been a while since we've been able to get out and meet with you. I want to introduce Jill Tregemba. She is the agribusiness manager for the Wyoming Business Council. Joined us in March. I would say kind of the genesis here is, I think 3 years ago, we had the old SF 108 ag marketing bill. And we've been working on that, and we're so happy to have Jill on board, really taking that ball and running with it and working with the Joint Ag Committee, and especially important with a lot of industry associations and private businesses. We have seen a growth in small USDA plants, both in construction and expansion the last couple of years. And we had the 2020 Wyoming beef industry study came out a year ago this month. And we talked a lot, the study showed a lot about creating it was targeting beef, but this protein industry ecosystem in Wyoming. And we see this, the reason I say that is that talks about not just construction and expansion of meat processing plants, but the ecosystem. What do you do with the offal? What do you do to cut the landfill costs for our small meat packing plants? and workforce needs and training and transportation, distribution, cold storage, things like that. So I think when you look at this, the continuation of this bill and the amendments, it basically continues the work we've been doing and looking forward, working with industry. What are their pains and needs and gaps and successes, and how do we build out that ecosystem? Jill, I don't know if you have anything else to add, but I would just say in general, it continues the work that's started and can expand on it in the future. And I think it is important to take a holistic look at the industry ecosystem too, and that includes parts of that.
Okay, and Mr. Goldberg, I forgot to mention to the committee, in case there's any confusion, this is a different bill than the one that we tabled. I got a little more information on it, and the meat processing bill will be coming up, I think, Thursday. Since it has already been announced, I probably should have got it in. It's an important bill as well. This is separate from it because it's going to be a continuing program. The other will be stimulus funding as more of an emergency deal. And Jill, I can introduce Jill. She is comes from a long time farming and ranching family in Huntley. Her dad and I are good friends, and we're in a competition to see who can accumulate the most grandkids. And I'm not sure, but I think we're tied. But I won't ask. I might be behind by now, but go ahead, Jill, when you're ready.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for having us today. I think that Ron summed it up pretty well. This bill encompasses a lot of what I do day to day, working with industry partners, working with business people. We have seen some of the points of the bill grow in the last year with USDA expansion of plants, and through some of that CARES money and the governor's program that the Department of Ag administered, some new plants were able to stand up or change their inspection level. So that's been good for the industry. This bill is a little more prescriptive as to some of the duties that are outlined, but overall it really is an expansion of what's underway at the Business Council. And I'd be glad to answer any questions as you go along today. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Fortner, I didn't mean to. I saw your hand up and forgot. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the cost going to be to the taxpayers if we pass this bill on a yearly basis? Thank you.
You know, Mr. Chairman, Representative Fortner, I know we turned in a fiscal note. I'm going to try to pull that up. Basically, there is about 1.6 million remaining in the budget, if I'm correct. And the fiscal note, some of the additional things, I apologize.
We have an impact. I'm looking at the fiscal note and it doesn't talk about the 1.6 million. I thought we appropriated.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I think I might be confusing that with another.
Okay. The main impact right now, I think, is the duties and responsibilities of agency staff. Department of Ag would be included, I think, as well as a business council. Yeah, I'm new to the Ag committee. Can my vice chairman help me at all on this? We've been focused on that meat processing bill. So one of the other representatives have been, go ahead, Aaron.
Mr. Chairman, so this doesn't really have, according to the fiscal note, doesn't have a fiscal impact, and I think it uses funds that were inside the business council already. And let's see, I found it. Page 3 at the line 1, contingent on available funds. So it doesn't necessarily have to use funds, if they're there, it can use it. They can use it for that. And I think there is some leftover funding from other projects, if I remember correctly, but I may have to go back to the agency for that one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I had that up and I must have inadvertently clicked it off. But I think, you know, there's some, as we work on the strategy and execution, I think there could be some marketing dollars. There could be some consultant, you know, if there's help, technical expertise for the meat processors and such. So.
Thank you, sir. So I'm trying to find it here, but I believe that there's going to be a focus on USDA plants, which we have couple different levels that I know of processing, state inspected and federally inspected. The USDA plants are much easier to market the meat wherever you want to and however you want to. So that inspection is, I thought it was in here, but it may not be. Might be mixing it up with the other, but anyway, that would be one of the differences between some of the plants that we have. A question I might have, and I don't believe the Department of Ag is here, but I'll make sure they are for the next, when we do the meat processing, and it'll probably be the first one we do Thursday morning. The question I would have is, I've talked to different processing places. One of them is an established, well-run outfit, and one's kind of in between, has just started up, and another one's trying to start up. And I get differences in opinion on whether the Department of Ag should have a template to get a startup plant going. This one could be supplementary, and the other bill allows for that too, $1 million per project. I guess any input we can get. One of, the startup guy said on his that it was just difficult knowing what hoops to jump through. The other gentleman on the other side of the deal, and his is up and running really well, and I think he's expanding, believed that the template had been a problem for people checking boxes and not paying attention to what the requirements were for inspection and what have you. And that's part of the reason that they got rid of the template for startup plants. If Mr. Goldberg or Mrs. Trebunga have anything to add to it, I guess you could go ahead and talk, but we may talk with Department of Ag next time. Oh, Clarissa, do we have Department of Ag here?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe we do have the Department of Ag. We have Doug Miyamoto as well as Stacia Berry. So I'd be happy to admit them.
Okay, why don't we bring them in right now? Mr. Miyamoto and Stacia, go ahead when you're, whoever's ready, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't know if you wanted us in here or not, so we decided we would raise our hands in case we could answer any questions for you this morning. So with me, Mr. Chairman and committee, I have Stacia Berry. She's the Deputy Director for the Department of Ag, and she is the one that has been administering the emergency response meat expansion grant program to this point in time that we talked about a little bit last time. I know you had some questions about templates that we provide when we're trying to provide technical assistance to plants opening. Whether they're seeking USDA inspection or a state Department of Ag inspection, they will submit plant review plans, essentially blueprints for those plants. And we always have staff available, and USDA should as well, to talk about those plants before construction begins and walk through a very solid plan of what needs to be included before before inspection could be granted for either one. So whether it's USDA or whether it's WDA, we should be talking about the requirements for the facility well before construction starts. We actually, here at the Department of Agriculture, sign off on the plan before it ever even gets into the construction phase. That's part of the process that we go through. But with that, Mr. Chairman, if you have other questions about inspection or our program, Stacia and I are available to answer anything you might have.
Okay, so I might have misunderstood and misspoke on the template. It sounds like you have, if not a template, you do have personnel that can walk people through the requirements they have for the inspection, inspected facility. Committee, questions? So there aren't any questions. We may have more questions for the next bill that we're not doing it today. I haven't noticed it. This is an odd way of doing things. It was read in a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't realize I could have started with that bill if we'd have noticed it. We'll do it Thursday morning, probably first thing, so that everybody's aware that's here and in the meeting, and you'll know that we're going to do it then. Oh, we have a question. Mr. Fortner, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did we decide on a cost per year on this project, or did I just miss it to the taxpayers?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, who's somebody? Go ahead, whoever.
Representative Clausen, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Representative Clausen.
So there is no fiscal note, and this is mostly technical assistance, expertise, loans, a few grants. But if you look at page 1 or page 3, line 1, it's contingent on available funds. So there is no increase to the taxpayer.
Representative Fortner.
Thank you very much.
You're good. Okay, Representative Larson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I guess I'm having troubles with the bill. I'm kind of wondering, could the Business Council do this without our mandate? And would you do it? I guess, I don't know. And then also have maybe directed toward the Department of Ag, have most of the plants that wanted to expand or even start did that already with the COVID money that has been kind of distributed. So a couple questions.
Okay, go ahead and answer those now. We'll have another question in a bit, but and I think in a non-virtual world we would have been done with the other bill first, because this is overlapping. It's the other bill, the meat processing bill, is a stimulus funding, and it's urgent that we get it used if have it while it's available. And this one would be a continuing program, but go ahead, either Jill or Ron.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Representative Fortner, Representative Clausen, thank you. Yeah, I think you described the fiscal impact pretty well. And I think I am probably confusing the meat processing program stimulus bill a little bit this morning. I apologize for that. There is, last year there was a bill that passed that allocated $1 million to that out of the original Senate File 108 fund to assist with expansion or construction of meat processing plants. So kind of it's there's funding there that gets maybe drawn down, so to speak, if it's used for projects. But in general, it's a lot of the work that we've been working on the last 3 years, and Jill's continuing that effort, the technical assistance side of things, and trying to grow out that ecosystem. So if we're expanding and building plants and we work on the transportation, distribution, and marketing, and provide technical assistance where it's possible. As Mr. Miyamoto and Ms. Berry talked about, that having a plan up front and what are the hurdles and the technical assistance needed. So I guess in short, I would say we've been working on this and we'll continue working on it. And Jill, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
I would just add that, yes, this will continue to be a priority at the Business Council. We know that meat processing in Wyoming is not only a priority to the legislature, but the producers and the stakeholders involved. So we will continue to focus on it with or without the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. I think one of the things that are probably both our Department of Ag and the Business Council can help producers with, or business people with, is grant application too. That's part of a big piece of what would happen in this particular bill, I'm guessing. Representative Blackburn, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess since everybody's here, I will jump into this bill a little bit. I've got a question that I worked out during the interim. So my big concern with this bill is on page 4, line 12 and 13, where it talks about within and outside the state of Wyoming. Again, on 17, within and outside the state of Wyoming. I'm just wondering why that got put into this bill and why we would think about funding a plant of any kind, whether it's meat or whatever, outside the state of Wyoming. I don't know if the Business Council can answer that or the Vice Chair.
Representative Clausen.
Mr. Chairman, I can speak to that. So there's a huge, I guess, market outside the state. We didn't want to limit this in this bill to just in-state infrastructure. I mean, we have a global market, really. It could be anywhere in the world that you could build infrastructure or need technical assistance or equipment or utilities or just help with these things. In general, just professional help with technical assistance, and that's why we did it within or outside the state. You could develop markets in Front Range of the state to the south, or basically anywhere. We didn't want to limit it to just things inside the state. So,
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Representative.
Vice Chair, so I'm getting from your comments that they would still be Wyoming-owned companies, even though they would be doing their construction and so forth outside the state. Is that correct?
that was the intention, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, the bill reads a little differently where Representative Blackburn is, because I don't think I caught this. I think when I was reading it, I presumed it would be product from outside of the state that would come into the state facilities. This indicates that we develop, acquire, own, lease, operate, maintain, modernize, upgrade, or dispose within and outside of the state of Wyoming meat processing facilities. That's an amendment we want to bring, might want to bring, unless somebody has a real good idea as to why we would build one in Nebraska.
Mr. Chairman.
Or another state. Go ahead, Representative.
So I can speak to that in real life terms. So we had a group from my county that actually put together and owned a plant that was in Greeley, Colorado, but the ownership was in Wyoming, and they purchased a plant that was already in existence and then operated it basically throughout the United States, but worldwide is where their product went. So there may be an occasion where a Wyoming entity that shipped Wyoming product could basically buy a plant across the border. This was just across the border to the state to our south, but it may play into a better business plan, and I think that was the reasoning.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Clausen. Oh, Representative Heiner, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a serious concern about allowing state money to go outside of the state. So if they operate and own a facility outside the state, is that solely taking meat products or livestock from Wyoming, or is it benefiting other states where these facilities are located? I've got a serious concern about allowing state money to be used out of state to promote the economy in states surrounding Wyoming. So as it is right now, I'm going to have a hard time voting for this bill that allows money to flow outside of the state.
Okay. Do any of our guests have any input on this? And I can kind of see why. So I can speak to a little of why it probably got there myself, but go ahead, Representative Clausen.
So if you read the first part of this paragraph on page 4, line 9, it says provides loans, grants, technical assistance, or expertise to assist producers plan, finance, construct, develop, acquire, own, lease, upgrade, or dispose within and outside. So if you had infrastructure that you needed to ship to, if you wanted to do business globally, it would allow this. It's not like a direct appropriation to something outside the state, but you would most definitely, if you want to do business in other parts of the state, you may need technical assistance, expertise, and professional help outside. So that, I think that's where it's leaning to, if that softens some of the concerns.
Representative Wharf. You're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess as I listen to the debate and read the bill, I guess I'm leaning against this bill, as it seems like to me we got the state doing things that the private sector should be doing, and I appreciate the fact that they're trying to help with this, but I think there's got to be a private sector that the state would be directly competing with. And I just think that's a bad form of government. I think we're better off to let the private sector do these type of things. And so probably for that reason, I'm going to vote against this bill. Thank you.
Representative Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry I opened up for debate. I hadn't intended on that. I just wanted some input, but should we move this bill and get on with it? Or?
Okay, are you done asking questions of our agency people and what have you? It looks like we probably are. Are you done, Representative Western, with should we move the bill and get into the discussion? I can answer some of the reasoning behind this. Go ahead, Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to piggyback off Representative Clausen's points, I mean, I think it makes a really good point. I think we're getting lost in the abstract here. I think if we need to think this through in a real world scenario. So let's say you're a small, you're a startup, you've got 3, 4, 5 employees, business is going well, and there's demand for your product out of state. That is going to mean that there's a chance you might have to invest, whether it be in infrastructure or in manpower, personnel, whatever it is, out of state. And I think, and I appreciate the previous speaker's comments about private industry. Well, sure, of course, that would be great, but I don't see just a flood of venture capitalists running into Wyoming looking to invest in this kind of stuff. Because right now the private market is kicking agriculture in the teeth. And if we want Wyoming to be able to at least have some kind of presence, it's going to need some kind of assistance. To be sure, we can't just state fund this thing from the top up, front to back, side to side. But I think having some assistance can absolutely help give agriculture in Wyoming a fighting chance. And I think this bill is that.
Okay. Committee, I would suggest we move the bill and get into it, a discussion. I think there are some explanations that can come afterwards. Oh, Clarissa, go ahead. We have more public input. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there are a couple more people who would like to comment. We have Brett Moline, as well as
Okay.
Jim, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. And Miss Vance as well. So,
Okay. Go ahead and admit them in. I'll go ahead and do a little bit of explaining on why this thing is necessary. Anybody who's tried to process beef or pork in the state of Wyoming, especially pork, will find that it's difficult to do. I have a favorite processor that is across the border in Nebraska. I had a processor I used and liked in Torrington that burned down. We are really short on processing facilities. If we rely on the large packing plants to take care of this, they'll have it all in Venezuela, which is kind of where the thing is going. I'd rather keep the product at home. I also, though, have some concerns, and I think we can amend the part of any money going outside of the state for facilities. We've done enough of that already, probably. And I think we can keep the bill alive by at least amending that out. As far as the distribution and the marketing plans, that should be a global deal because we've got more beef cattle than we do people in the state of Wyoming. So we're not going to be able to eat them all. Somebody there, this would facilitate plans that people would want. To the private sector, this is only supplemental. It could be up to $1 million. And I think in some of the plants that I'd like to see myself would be maybe 50 to 100 animals a week, which would change. I don't think we have anybody who does that in the state. It would change the whole industry. $1 million would barely touch that, but a lot of guidance and help with grants and whatnot would possibly help get some of those off the ground. This little plant that I work with in Nebraska is booked out over a year. And I hear every plant's kind of booked out that way. So we do need more of these. This just encourages that along. And I think we can do some amending to fix it. And if we run out of time, we can table it and continue the discussion on Thursday. We have more people that have come into the meeting. Welcome, Mr. Moline, again to our meeting. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation. I think this bill is important for several aspects. The way I view it, this will not be public entities. These will be the public through the state government providing assistance to private businesses. That's extremely important for several reasons. We need more capacity for slaughter. As the good chairman mentioned, many of these plants are booked out for over a year. And so we need more capacity for slaughter in the state, but they will be privately owned. Now, I think we need to work on this quickly. Right now, buying local, knowing where your meat comes from is extremely important to the consumer. We're poised at a great point to help capture that. And as was mentioned, that's going to help out the agricultural producer, it's going to help out the consumer. Providing more processing, more industrial facilities in the state's going to help out the local economies as well. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll try to be brief, but I'll sit for any questions and look for your support of this bill, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moline. Mr. McGagnon, go ahead when you're ready. You're muted, Jim.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Chairman. Jim McGagnon with the Wyoming Stockgrowers Association. We feel a very strong need for this bill at this point in time. We've had a very good working relationship with the Wyoming Business Council on working on opportunities for getting more processing of meat in Wyoming, beef in particular in our case. The way we look at this bill, first of all, I would say, as I understand the bill, it does not make any dollars available that are not basically already available through programs that the Business Council has. What it does is focus some of those dollars and focus their attention on using them to enhance meat processing and marketing out of the state of Wyoming. And that is extremely important to us. We've been involved in discussions with several entities over the past 2 to 3 years to come into Wyoming and invest in Wyoming and build a processing facility on a larger scale, as Chairman Eklund has referred to, perhaps a couple hundred head a week to as much as 1,500 or 2,000 head a day, whatever that case may be. And as we talk with these people and look for these investments, and the plants would be built with private investments, the state can't fund the private entity. They can support providing some infrastructure for it, sewer, water, roadways, etc., and they can grant loans to it. But the importance of this bill, as much as anything else, is the message it delivers. It allows us to go to potential investors and say, look here, the state of Wyoming as a state and our legislature is made this a priority to get meat processing in the state of Wyoming to support our third largest industry. And so in our view, this bill is important for that reason. It brings a little more structure to the focus of the effort of the Business Council. It grants them some rulemaking authority so that if we see some ways that these programs could be identified a little more clearly as to how some of this support would be available to an investor in the state, that's available as well. I would, Mr. Chairman, comment briefly on the concern that was raised by Representative Blackburn with regards to out of state. We've had some of that concern as well. I don't think we want to see the state supporting construction of a new meat processing facility out of the state of Wyoming. I think that section could perhaps be amended with just slightly to provide that a processing facility would have to be in state, but would still allow the use of these funds to support the infrastructure that might be necessary to market our product out of state, whatever that might be, and certainly be happy to work on providing some language to identify that a little bit differently, because I've had some of my own members who've looked at this expressed concern with saying that we're going to potentially support building new facilities out of state. And I think that's not the intent here, and could be clarified so that wouldn't be inclined to happen. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would just urge support for this bill and would be happy to entertain any questions from the committee.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Magagna. Mr. Wharf, you're on. And then after Mr. Wharf, we will probably table this until the next meeting so everybody's aware of it. I think we're going to try to secure, for the committee's information, try to secure a committee room there. Most of the committees here in the chamber, and it becomes chaotic in the house if you've ever been here at 5 minutes, 10 minutes to 10. But yeah. Go ahead, Representative Wharf.
Mr. Chairman, that was what I was going to suggest, is that we table this. I don't want to rush this bill, and I would like to support it. Right now, I have some concerns with that, and I don't want to rush it because I don't want to have a good bill go down if we can save it. But I would ask maybe we table this because we're running out of time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Representative Wharf. We will table it, and I'm not sure what this meeting as of now will be adjourned, but stay tuned for continued conversation. Everybody digest what you've learned and come with more questions, and we'll see what we can do, if we can work some magic on this bill so that everybody's comfortable with it. And I'll stay on, Clarissa. You had some things you needed to go over with